Oh, well, I guess when we talk about the historic district, maybe we can just pull up a village map. It'd be helpful for me.
Yeah, we'll definitely do that. I'm just trying to see if Stuart is coming.
Is it a public discussion or?
It is a public meeting, it's public discussion,
Oh,
and we're being recorded.
is it
So
possible?
we actually have a quorum right now.
Is it possible? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is it possible to discuss something that's not on public record? To ask for
Stuart,
private discussion?
Yes. But it depends on the discussion. So there's a couple of ways you can deal with that. If it's like a conversation that you would like to have with me offline.
No, I think just one with the
Yeah.
group,
So
but not.
If you want to have a
on
discussion
public.
with the group, then you have to go into executive session.
That's
And
the
executive
motion I-
session can only be done for a few different reasons.
Oh,
So Stuart, are you able to talk about the executive session qualifications? Like what?
I can, yes, by the way, folks, I completely forgot this was going to be there. Had I done that, I actually might have driven to work because otherwise I'd be walking there and then walking home. This way I'll just walk from here.
could you
but-
put a little color behind me? Am I the only one? I just found it.
But executive session can only be held for, I believe it's 5 or 6 specific reasons. That would mean a matter of personnel, a matter of collective bargaining, a matter of real property, a matter of which is like sort of security concerns. They generally, in a matter here, unless it's a matter of real property, it probably won't come up. If you needed to speak with counsel, that would be what's called an advice of counsel session. That's not executive session. The reason the difference is to go into executive session, you have to be in an open meeting to go into executive session. For advice of counsel, you can have an advice of counsel anytime. But for executive session, someone has to make a motion to go into executive session. It then must be for one of the listed reasons that are in section 105 of the Public Officers Law. And then you go into executive session. You as board members have the right to decide who would be attending the executive session. For example, when we have matters that deal with collective bargaining, we will often have our labor counsel there or the personnel director. But so that's essentially what executive session is. You just can't go into it for any reason. You have to go into it for specified reasons, and that reason has to be on the record.
Oh, okay. And you said the other option was advice of counsel?
Right. If you needed to speak with the attorney for something that dealt with a legal issue, you can do that, and it's advice of counsel. What you can do is you can just break up and go into advice of counsel. Given it the room you're in, as you'll notice, there's a conference room just on the other side of that wall. Often we would have an advice of counsel in that room during the course of a meeting. An advice of counsel is just as it sounds. It's basically an attorney-client discussion on a legal matter.
So if I ask for advice of counsel, could everyone still be here? And if there's nobody in the audience, it's not being recorded or accessed via Zoom?
If it's advice of counsel, you wouldn't want it recorded. But if there's no one in the room, basically you just close the door and we could consider it advice of counsel. If someone came in, we might just say to them, could they wait outside till we're finished? But you could do it that way, yes.
Okay.
If you want to do that, we should really do that if possible at the end.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'd like to,
Because, right.
I'd like to broach that. I'd like to ask for that opportunity, but with everybody here at the end.
Okay, because at that point I would have to turn the recording off. And then if there's nobody else on the attendee list, then it's just us.
Yeah, and then, and nobody could get into it via Zoom, the public, right?
Well, anybody could get into it, but I would know if they got into it, and it's not being recorded, so it won't be uploaded
Oh, okay,
later.
all right. That's
Um,
terrific.
That's the only other alternative is to turn off this and call Stuart on the cell phone.
Well,
Well,
not
yeah,
as earth shattering, it's something I think, it'd be good to get some feedback, I think, from the board from Stuart. I can't tell you what it's about yet, because of council, right? So let's wait till the end if people don't mind, assuming this is not a long meeting.
Yeah, Adam is running a couple minutes late.
Do we have the folks here for the one application?
We don't have the folks here from the one application. I'd be honest with you, I'm not very surprised. They've had a hard time following the process. They've been getting assistance from somebody. The application, in my opinion, is so simple that I think I think you should process it. I think you should consider it and process it. I don't see a world where you would have a problem with it.
No, I would agree with you. And folks, just to let you know, the way it works with the awning application, because it's in a historic district, it comes to you. It would then go to the Board of Trustees, because any awning which is over the village's sidewalk or right-of-way requires village board approval. Even here, where it's basically to redo an awning, it would require approval. So it initially was filed with with
a call to order and a roll call apology. We're sorry, going right into the meeting.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Please go ahead.
Leading the meeting. Joe, sir, you enjoy
You do whatever you wish.
Okay. Okay, just go with call to order.
Yeah, I'd like to call to order the October 3rd HPC meeting.
Okay, 7:07. And I'll do a roll call. And so Adam Markovitz is currently absent, although he's on his way. Phil Ferranda is absent. Catherine Wilson is
Here.
Joyce Cole,
Here.
Stephen Cage, absent. Dan Garwood,
Yeah, you're
Mary Kay Griner.
Here.
All right. Now you can move on to the HPC 125 Main Street application. It's a awning in a BC zone district on the main, in the Main Street Historic District. There you go, Stuart.
What I was saying, folks, I apologize. This had originally been filed with the building department because it is an awning application. It was realized after it was filed that because it's in a historic district, it has to come to HPC first. The applicant delayed a little bit. That's why it came on this agenda, not last month's agenda. But as Jaime points out, there is actually an awning already there, I believe. And, I think they're looking to put something up there that says Doka's on it for the restaurant that's there. So, Jaime, I'll let you do it, but that's basically the application. If the board is amenable to granting a certificate of appropriateness, it then would go to the Board of Trustees for a resolution authorizing the placement of the awning.
Yeah, so here's the full detail is it's a 70-inch awning long. It's 12 inches off of the surface of the building, the facade. The balance or the drop down section is about 10 inches. You have the writing and everything else that goes into the logo of 8.5 inches by 22 inches long. And the awning, as they show from the example in the back page, is almost identical to an awning, which is right next door. So it's a very similar awning. It's, nothing complicated about it. So it's just, they have to come here.
I only had a couple of questions. I guess maybe only one question, which I assume has been taken care of. There's a minimum head height between the bottom of the new awning and the sidewalk. They don't indicate anything. Is it supposed to be 6'8" or 7 or 8?
I'm actually not sure, but I know that the
Is that
building department is responsible for governing that.
Did it say that the height?
207 inches on the ground.
Oh, good. So it does
Yeah,
say that.
okay,
Good.
107.
Good. And I think, yeah, that's fine.
And it looks identical to first building.
It does.
Yeah,
It really does.
it may be the same company.
Yeah. You could probably consult with them. Either way, I don't have a problem. It looks-
Okay, so you will need to open a public hearing, close the public hearing before you can vote on that.
How do you open? Okay.
So you would call for a motion
Oh, motion to.
to open a public hearing on this application. And somebody has to say
I'll
first,
second. First,
okay,
Second.
second, okay. So first is Joyce. Okay, so now the public hearing is open. We check, there's nobody in the attendee list, there's nobody in the public. So now you call, because there was no comments from the public on this application, now you call for a motion to close the application. Close the public hearing.
Close the public.
Yeah.
I call.
Call for a motion to close the public hearing.
A first here, a second?
Okay, Dan, first,
First?
that's right, okay, second, Joyce,
Funny, it's just by you.
Um, and then you can just say all in favor.
All in favor?
I,
No opposed? That's, okay, so then, you go. All right, now, Adam's here. All right.
hi, Adam.
Hi. Nice to see you.
You just missed our vote.
Okay, good. Yeah. So now you're here and we'll get you up to speed. So they've gone through the DOCA awning application. I think everybody here has found it basically to be identical to the First Village application, First Village awning. It's very small and unobtrusive. They opened the public hearing, they closed the public hearing. And now all that remains is a motion to approve, unless you'd like to discuss the application further.
I have no question, but it's a non-controversial application. I'd love to approve it without changes. Has someone made a motion?
No.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, so,
That's the motion to vote on it?
all right, second.
Yeah, second. But you don't have to say, there's no first motion to decide on it, unlike the other two motions? It's just a second motion?
Somebody makes a motion, so the chair of the meeting would call for a motion, normally the chair, Adam's the chair, normally the chair doesn't make a motion. Somebody else has to make a motion, but the chair can make a motion. And then somebody has to second that motion so that you can go to the next stage, which is to vote on it. And then there's a couple ways of doing the vote, you can sort of say, all in favor, everybody's in favor, or acclamation. Is there any sort of opposition to this? If there's no opposition, everybody's gonna vote in favor of it, then oftentimes you can just,
Well, Heidi, it was directed, I guess, because, somebody had a first motion that Catherine raised. but when-
that's right, she didn't make the motion. She asked the group to,
Oh,
for somebody to make the motion.
oh,
Okay, all in favor?
oh. I,
We're unanimous.
oh, great.
Good evening, Steve. We just voted unanimously to approve the proposed awning at Dopus.
Oh.
Wish to make any comments on the application?
No,
Okay. All right, well, good evening, everybody. There are only two matters on the agenda this evening. We've already addressed the application. And that leaves local landmarking. I'll preface this with a little bit of personal history, which is that I joined the HPC in 2017, after the destruction of the Brandwood Pill Factory. Happened about 2 years before I joined the HPC. And at that time, there was a lot of concern about what more can be done to protect the really important buildings in Austin. So local landmarking has always been something I've been interested in. Over the last few years, you've considered locally landmarking a district, the Ellis Place Historic District was a proposed district that we considered at one point in time. Ultimately, that was by slim margin voted down by the HPC as a proposed district. The reason for that was not because the district was not eligible or did not meet the eligibility criterion. The reason I think at that time was just the overwhelming opposition to district designation by the homeowners on Ellis Place. So that project fizzled. We did not move forward with landmarking Ellis Place. I should note that HPC does not have the authority to unilaterally landmark anything. We can make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, which is vested with the ultimate authority to do so under the village code. So in the case of Ellis Place, we opted not to make that recommendation to the board. More recently, there was an effort to explore landmarking of the former residents of Sing Sing Ward and Lewis Loss. And his residence is now the clubhouse of condominium development in the village. We, having learned something from the Ellis Place experience, tried to engage the owners in the condominium development before moving it to an actual vote. In the Ellis Place case, we went forward with the public hearing, and there was an actual vote on whether to make the recommendation or not. In the case of Warden Laws's house, we didn't get as far as a public hearing and a vote, as I recall. It all remained very preliminary, as I recall. And again, the reason we abandoned that landmark project was because of overwhelming opposition by the condominium owners. And I think opposition isn't a factor for consideration under the code, but it is something that I think makes sense for the commission to consider, whether the owners are buying into the proposed landmarking. I think we abandoned landmarking the Sing Sing Warden's house, also because we didn't see it as an imminent danger of being torn down or dramatically altered. And I think if circumstances had been different and it was an endangered building, then that project may come out different. So that's a little personal background of mine with landmarking in the village. I think landmarking is really important. And, landmarking is what gives the HPC its authority to review changes to buildings. It's an important legal barrier to an owner just deciding to take down a building altogether if this person wants to. I'll be leaving the HPC shortly, but I wanted to have a conversation about landmarking on my way out, as it and there are two agenda items under this heading, local landmarking. There's a potential historic district that Joyce Cole has been thinking about, Hunter Street, Water Street, and Secret Road. And the agenda says Quincy Street Warehouse. I think it's a typo. I know it's a typo because this is a building that I care about. It's on Quimby Street, Quimby. But Joyce has prepared something of a proposal. I come empty-handed. Maybe we should start with a discussion of Joyce's proposal. And with that, I would turn it over to Joyce.
Thank you. I'm pretty loud now.
Yeah, so the speaker, not the speaker, the microphone is up there. So definitely speaking to that, that may help you, but speak up in general, because we need to get it for the microphone, which is the most important place, because when the minutes are done, we can hear you. It's gonna be very difficult.
So I proposed these three streets, in doing research as historian. I lived here all my life. I did not know some of this history before that. I just knew the people. But there was considerable contributions to this community, not just the Black community, by the people living on these streets. Historically in Ossining, especially during the Great Migration, the Black people were pushed to the waterfront area. So these three streets, they were sprinkled here and there in other places, but in particular, these three streets is where they were. And what they managed to build inside of a community, it was a community inside of a community, but what they did was kind of incredible. And it shows up in history books, like, I'm not sure if you're all familiar with the Green Book, where Black people were not allowed, well, not allowed, but it was unsafe for them to travel, civil rights era today, but it was unsafe for them to travel, so they created a book called the Green Book, the Traveling Green Book, that they would have places in there that were safe for Black people to go, for shelter, to get gas, to eat, to get your hair done. There were places that were safe for you to go, and you would follow this book, the Negro Motorist Green Book. And Ossining, our little baby little town, our village, had places in the Green Book, and they were on these streets that were safe for Black people when they were traveling all over the country, for them to travel here in Ossining. And even one of our hotels was on the list as a safe place, but that hotel was on Main Street. And then we had one down on Secor Road, right on the corner of Water Street and Secor Road. And so in terms of architecture, a lot of things are not here anymore, or they don't look the same, or they're owned by someone else. So Adam, when you were saying it, I was like, I know there's gonna be opposition, because they want to build considerably on Secor Road. I think for me, I just want to honor in some way this contribution for this entire community. I have a hard time letting it go. We're letting a lot go in our village, a lot of history. Like I see the Robinson House, and it makes me like cry, but the gentleman taking care of that is really trying to keep it together. But for like I call it Dr. Phil's house. But then the other house, it's just going. And then you have the pill factory gone, and we've never landmarked the old high school, the Washington school. I just think we've had so much rich history here that we have not tried to protect yet, that I almost feel an urge, Adam, to start protecting things. Because a lot of new people are coming in, and that's wonderful, but we want them to appreciate and love what we love, and keep the integrity of our old community intact, so they can share in what we love, and it adds to who we are. So this, if you look through everyone's, all the different streets, should I read all of this into the record? It's too much to read into.
You don't have to, you can present whatever you want.
Yeah, so such as Dr. Hill, George W. Hill, the first Black doctor in Westchester County, to be attending resident doctor in any hospital. He was in the Ossining Hospital and then went on to Phelps. He was chief of staff actually at Ossining Hospital. He was instrumental in the creation of the Ossining Open Door, which people still use today. He really advocated for the underserved community in terms of healthcare. He was an activist. He did a lot in the Ossining Public Library in terms of literacy for Black children, all children. He really cared about kids, but particularly Black children, because when he went to school at Cornell, and he tried to go into medical school, they would not let him in because they said the white students would not want to go to school with him, so he had to go to Indiana. for medical school where he was the only Black student. So when he came back to he actually chose Ossining because they told him he would not be welcome. He wanted to go a place that he would not be welcome to change their mind. So he chose Ossining, and a scholarship that he started, the Cooperative Ops Scholarship Fund, is still given out today. We have Doors Circle by the rec. That was all by the Negro Civic organization that he started. He was part of the Negro Elks that's tried to start a community center for Black people where the Rigney Hotel used to be, but it's a parking lot now by Metallized Carbon. But him alone, the things he did is quite incredible. And he did this on 3 streets, actually, Croton Street, then he moved to Hunter Street, and then he moved to State Street. Croton Street or Croton Street?
All in three, no.
I didn't put that in here because I'm only worried about Hunter Street, but he did have practice on all those streets.
Joyce, may I just have to say here, you only lived here though for 3 years?
No, not 3 years.
Oh,
No.
from 36, just from 36 to
39 was the first office.
I see.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
I
he
misread.
was here until he passed away when he was 94. John W. Hoffman Jr. taught in all of our hoity-toity schools here, our military schools. He was a professor of music. He graduated from the Palmer Institute in Ossining. He was brilliant as a musician, even traveled overseas with his all-white band, and he was the only Black person, the conductor. But then he went on to be the first Black deputy sheriff of Westchester County. Him and his wife both were denied access to Croton Point Park, and they sued and they won. So they were a force to be reckoned with as a couple. His first wife, Blanche, was also into music, but she was brilliant. She had great oratorical abilities. She was the heiress to a fortune because she was able to prove her genealogy to the Wendell family. And it was quite interesting watching the community react to this woman saying, I am part of this white family and I can prove it in my lineage. But she died before she could get her money. But it was a pretty incredible case to watch, but she also lived there. But-
I mean, just the World War I veteran, that's amazing. He was in a segregated army. Do we know what he did in World War I?
Which one? Dr. Hill?
Yeah.
He
No,
was a surgeon.
Hoffman.
I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but I can get that for you. But Dr. Hill was in World War II as a surgeon.
Yeah.
Then Blanche and John Hoffman, Ossining had a bunch of community parks, but they were not owned by the village. Private people purchased most of our parks in the beginning. However, none of the Black kids were welcomed in the white parks. So Ossining is the only community in Westchester County that had a park for Negro children, and it was on Hunter Street. They purchased the land, and our parks were pretty exciting, all of them, because they would have like these contests, who had the cleanest park, who had the best programming, and we did not have a recreation department as we do today. We had a recreation commission, and there was a Black recreation commission. They did not do it with the rest of the children, Black children. It was 2 separate commissions. And the person that ran each playground had to be school. They had to go to school, they had to be a teacher, so they can run great programs at the playground. Well, this playground always won. So it got to the point after many years that the white kids wanted to start coming to this Negro park. And so it was small, so now it wasn't a Negro park anymore, and that's how we got Snowden Park. Yes. So the point of saying that is a lot of things that we still enjoy today are from these people, this incredible thing that they were doing in order to be in this community, because they just want to be a part of it. And they would raise money for Baker Collier Cheer Fund. We all hear of that and still give to that today. I'm actually on the board of that, and it's full circle for me because I'm watching my great-great-grandfather raise money for it way back when, and now I'm on the board. So it's pretty incredible. You have, John F. Cheatham, these men were, that brought the, NAACP to Osmond. The branch is closed and it came back, but we have it back today. They did fight for causes outside of Osmond. When people were lynched down south, they would, collect money. They would have a lot of forums here. Dr. Hill, backing up with that, Dr. Hill would have sickle cell. As you all know, sickle cell affects Black people more. And he had clinics and would test 500 or so people, taught us what it does to our bodies. And he actually diagnosed a lot of people and were able to get them some care. They would not have had that without him. There was a goodie shop that showed up in the Negro Motorist Green Book. There was a hall for veterans on Seaport Road that serviced all veterans. These women would sew, bake, anything, big parties. They had a store on, I forget if it was 2529 Seaport Road, but there was a store on the bottom and this big hall. And all veterans were welcome, not just Black. All veterans were welcome when they came home, and these women in this organization would take care of them. If you move down the street a little bit more, you have the hotel that was owned by the Buchanans. And it has the laundromat now. You know what I'm talking about? The one at the bottom. Yeah, the Depot Square Hotel. So that, after. Yeah, the laundromat, but it used to be, it was the hotel before then, when the white gentleman owned it, it still was quite historic. When people were, executed at St. The reporters would stage there, and report on the, whatever was going on in the execution. But when it turned over to the Buchanan, they opened up this hotel bar kind of thing, and it was in the Negro Motorist Green Book. When there was the site of Osmond's fatal bus crash, I don't know if you all know about the fatal bus crash. One of the buses were leaving one of the games in 1934 from the prison. Instead of going right up the street, and made a left down the street and careened off of the ramp, burst into flames. And because all of the Black people lived down there, they saw it first, and they were the first ones to go in and start to save people. And one of the places that the people went into was this place where they put them in beds and tried to save people. It was the deadliest thing that happened in Austin. There was a billiard club, bringing it more current.
Excuse me, Joyce, are you reading that here somewhere? Because I.
That's in my head.
Oh, that's in your head. Okay.
You can't read your mind. Yeah, you can't, it's in here. You can go back and read it. I'm trying to also consolidate.
No, I'm trying to follow you. if you
Oh, so
don't-
we're not here.
Okay.
So you can take that. But One Station Plaza, I don't know if you all heard of Bunny Sharrock, instrumental in jazz, but they tried to start down there. The Watertown. Yes, the young lady is, oh, and I met her by the way. But the mission was to bring all types of art to Austin, and it was quite successful in the short time that it was there. Then Sonny died and other women left, and it. But if you go through here, there were salons, and literally it was a whole community settled inside of a community. We had our own stores, salons, goodie shops, and they weren't just for us. It was publicized to be a safe place for Black people.
Okay. Well, you know what might be helpful is, is there any way for you to pull up our codes? 270-25. Yep.
Adam, what do you want to know?
Oh, boy.
Wow.
I think it might be helpful to look at the criteria for landmarking.
Well, you're landmarking a district here. So it's a little bit different than you're landmarking a particular location. So that becomes significant here. It's also very important that you put specifically where you want this to be, and exactly what the location is, because a lot of what is there now is not what it looked like before. But you do want to have the specific boundaries of what you're looking to be a district. And that becomes particularly significant here. Jaime, it's 270-25C, just for your information, if anyone is looking. Specifically, C5.
Okay, so if you look at 5A1, that's what we're talking about, a HAD, historic and architectural design district. An area of the village which contains properties which meet one or more of the criteria for designation as a landmark. And by reason of possessing such qualities constitutes a distinct section of the village. And as Stuart was saying, the boundaries of each HAD shall be specified in detail. So I think as we think more about this, we got to think about boundaries. And then we've also got to think about 5A2. We've got to be able to justify the district containing properties which meet one or more criteria for designation as a landmark. Well, arguably, certain of the properties are eligible under 2B, identified with a historic personage. But also, as Stuart was saying, a number of the properties on this list either don't exist anymore or don't retain, the quote distinctive characteristics of the type, period, or method of construction. A through E, those are the criteria for landmark eligible buildings. What is A, Jaime?
Does it have to be all or just one of the 5?
One or more following. So maybe, yeah, A2. So that's the job of sort of narrowing this down, focusing it, is coming up with the boundaries and then figuring out how can we characterize these properties in such a way that they satisfy one or more. And I think the most likely characteristics are going to be A and B on that list, I think, for most of them.
Yeah.
All right. So another thought here is one way to bring recognition to an area, landmark. It is one way, it's not the only way. When we did our essay and video contest this past year, and speaking of which, I have the video saved on my computer. And one day soon, I hope to get that video on a thumb drive for the planning department, so that the video can be posted onto our website. I don't know if you have it also, Joyce, but I know that I have it saved on my computer, and it's late, but I'd love to get it up on our website as soon as I can. But another way of bringing attention to an area is to do things like the exhibition at Bethany and an accompanying video essay contest where you're sending students out into the area. You're identifying the properties of significance and they're writing about them. That's much easier to do, of course, than landmarking. It doesn't have the legal force behind it. Landmarking is a significant thing and it may encounter opposition. It's gotta be a tight package. So if we work on this over the coming months, I think we need to tighten it up, like, the playground, as an example. That doesn't exist anymore.
No, and ironically, it's owned by the Smith Robinson House. I followed the line, if they own it. Wow.
So it's a historically significant site of a thing that was once there. And I'm not sure that landmarking the site, I think there'd be an argument about whether it's even landmark eligible, because yes, the place is, under 2A associated with, a historic episode in Ossinings's history, has value as part of Ossinings's history, but the place doesn't exist anymore. So I think that's the work that would need to be done on this list, is sort of figuring out, all right, which of these sites still retain something that's worth preserving, saving legally. And then maybe once we get that narrowed down, then we can talk about potential borders and boundaries.
Could it even be just, it's a plaque, like,
That's another way.
my town, we had plaque for many historic.
It's another way of recognizing important places. Often the village has a museum in the streets, number of signs around town you may be aware of. Some of the signs refer to places that simply do not exist anymore.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe that's a way.
I mean, in Sparta,
Right.
oh,
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, I think one thing, it was Doug Turchin's idea, I think it was Michelle. In Sparta now, all the historic homes have a special oval sign. People could opt in and buy it for next to nothing, but I think it did a lot to, raise people's consciousness that, there are some very old homes there. Some look old, but then this really drives it home. And if there was some consistent plaque vocabulary and design, so people would recognize that, hey, there are a lot of these historic plaques around. If they were consistent, they'd all understand it's part of a theme, just the way that oval, designated signs in Sparta are the same design, same type of information.
Yeah, I don't think plaques are insignificant, especially if it's done as part of a program.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
like African American Museum in the Streets, where there's, a guide that people can go to. They can, there's codes, there's QR codes and things.
Yeah.
That's another way of,
I'm not opposed to it,
Yeah.
because being a realist, I know there's gonna be a problem because of what they wanna build on C4 Road, what just happened on Water Street. I already know that. I just want the recognition of the Black historic walking trail. Sounds wonderful. I just want to.
You just put your finger on it, a walking trail, Black historical walking trail.
Yeah.
That would be amazing. You could number each one or something, just like Sparta has a walking trail.
I think maybe too, it's good to think about, if we can think about what do we want to achieve by landmarking this area, okay? And then preservation of African-American history in Ossining. But then what are the implications of that how do we do that? If it's putting up plaques and doing a walking trail, but in 10 years, all of this is gonna be glass box condos, does that mean anything anymore? So, you see what I'm saying? Like,
No, I get what you're saying,
yeah,
and I
where do
think
we wanna go? Yeah,
that it still means something because a lot of these areas like Black Wall Street are gone.
Yeah.
yeah.
They're gone. And they have, new things, but it's the acknowledgement of what was.
It could have a
That's
photo.
okay.
on it.
A and
You
D,
could have a historic photo. I mean, assuming it's weatherproof and all that.
that may indeed be, something worthwhile in and of itself worth achieving. But then there may be houses there that are worth keeping, either because they're in good enough shape for that, or just because somebody of great personage lived there. I don't know, Sojourner Truth lived in Austin, right?
Yeah,
Is her house still there? or-
That's, the Vanderbilt mansion, so the lines changed, so
Oh.
it isn't even us anymore. She was there with, the Prophet Matthews and, it's a long story.
Is the house still there?
Oh, yes, she did.
Okay, maybe that's something just because of who she was, would be worth pursuing as well. And I know I'm going to check out some of that.
Who pays for it? If it is plaques and it's Black Historical Walking Tour, which is my favorite, I think what you said really makes a lot of sense. Who pays for that? Is that something that the village pays for, or the Historic Preservation Commission has to get funds for by volunteers?
I think we would probably have to look into, some kind of program. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one. We've already done Museum in the Streets, but I do wonder, maybe there's, another program, that they'd be interested in funding, specifically,
Would that be out of our purview as soon as it's a walking tour and not a landmark structure or something, and then somebody else has to deal with it, or? do we-
Well, the way the Museum in the Streets works, as I remember, it's sort of a joint financial commitment between this outside group and the village. Each program has its own rules. You may see those cast iron signs throughout the village. That's a state program for historical markers. I don't know off the top of my head which would be the most appropriate program to look into, and then maybe others we don't even know about.
The, Sparta tours we have, they're all private, this private foundation, but, I mean, you could do, that would be amazing, and I'm sure you get a lot of people who want to sign up for a walking tour, and people pay money, and then maybe it starts at a restaurant, I don't know, maybe we get a soul food restaurant or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's actually a great idea. I mean, it was one of those ideas was like, I'm gonna ask you for $1 million and hopefully you get 500,000, so. I just want to start honoring and not even just stopping here, but a lot of what we have.
To Stephen's point, of the structures identified on the list, the one I'm most familiar with is the Depot Square Hotel.
Mhm.
That one,
Yeah.
I think, might be a more obvious candidate for landmark.
Mhm.
It's got its history, plus it retains quite a bit of the architectural integrity.
Which house was that, sorry?
I'll pull it up.
Well, it's on Adam, if you want to tell them about this, you can, because the Black Church is
If you could, Joyce, you know more at this point. I'm on a list of some kind with the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and they launched this year, I think. Don't quote me on it. I think because of the funding they received from Jeff Bezos's ex-partner.
Sorry.
A program for preserving Black churches. And this just launched a few months ago. And I spread the word to Joyce Cole, who in turn spread the word to some churches locally, and I think those have some good news to
We
share.
have great news. We had two churches that were eligible. Star Bethlehem Baptist Church, we had to be in the community for a period more than 50 years. And Star Bethlehem has been here for 130 years, and in Full Gospel Tabernacle, 90 years. So they both were able to submit applications, so we're waiting to hear back. But it had not been for, they were so grateful. We would not have known about that opportunity for them.
What will that do?
That gives them, grants up to $250,000 to repair programming, pay, administrators. So they do quite a bit. You had to put in specifically, but for Full Gospel, put in for a lot of repair. And I don't remember what Star put in, but
So it doesn't, so the Star Bethlehem is on State Street, right? or Spring
Spring,
Street,
304,
Tabernacle is.
15 Brandon.
It's a small church.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And the church that's on Church Street was not eligible, I guess?
Not a black church.
I don't know. If you know, but-
Yeah, it had to be a black church. I was trying to wiggle them in because of their history of allowing slaves, and I was like, it doesn't get more historic than that. But it had to be a black congregation.
Right, and this is the building that you were mentioning, or
Yeah.
Steve or Adam were mentioning?
So thank you, Joyce, for that update. And we will have some very good news by the end of the year. So this, yeah, this is the building, the one that I'm familiar with, is former Depot Square Hotel, right?
Yeah.
Picture what it used to be.
I do it.
Black and
No, I
white.
didn't. I have them.
I think it looked a lot like this.
It is.
Really?
Yeah, it hasn't changed a lot. I think some of the, some of the facade has changed a little bit, but color has changed probably. And then this part at the bottom has changed.
Right.
And then this is relatively new. So I'm not sure what's going on here.
And is it attached to the waterfront deli?
This,
That's something different.
this is a laundry depot.
Yes, for the
There
light,
is,
yeah.
oh, this,
Is it just a different?
I'm not totally sure if it is or isn't, maybe the same ownership, I have to go back and check.
I
It's
just-
not physically attached to, it, no.
No.
It
Oh,
wasn't part of the hotel region.
But it does, I mean, they're very close to each other. And I'm not 100% sure that they're not actually the same ownership.
I can email later a progression of that, because it actually started out two houses and they built around one of the houses.
Oh, really?
And it was a wine garden at the top. A beer garden right at the top up there. I think they call it castellated parapet or something. Yeah.
That's correct.
And, yeah, and there was a garden up there. So it has changed, but kept it. And the progression of it is actually quite remarkable, and I'll send it to everybody. I have it.
So it's another idea, sort of creating a landmark district is perhaps landmarking some individual structures on this list that have retained some of their character.
I mean, so I have some questions just to sort of as follow-up.
Come down.
So this property here is one of the oldest, or is it the oldest?
Yeah, what's happening with that?
Although I don't know if it has any connection to any of that
No.
history. And then this house,
This is Speller House.
is the Speller House.
Go down the street.
Does the Speller House have any history? to it?
No, you can go down the street, go down the street.
Okay.
That's your mother was right here, right?
This one.
Yes. That was a storefront on the bottom, and where they had the veterans things, and they had a store and a salon. And the gentleman himself, was quite historic. He owned a barber shop in Croton. They did not let black people own things, and he owned a barber shop for many years in Croton. Mr. Cheatham, no, Cheatham, yeah. And, that's where they had the veterans organization and all the balls and things for the veterans. And there was a store and a salon, and that was in the green book.
what would you say the house is?
Oh, I have to go back.
The reason why I ask is, I know not everybody wants it, but in some cases, would people want plaques on it, on their house?
That house needs a lot of help, a lot.
No, I'm just talking in general.
And the
Landmarking,
salon.
it may not help it. I don't know. I mean, would it help it? I mean, it keeps you from letting it deteriorate?
I'm not sure, is it even occupied at the moment?
No,
Yeah, it's,
I mean, is that what landmarking could do? Once it's landmarked, now you can't let it, what do you call it, constructive deterioration or neglect, something neglect? Somebody mentioned that term once, a while ago.
demolition by neglect.
yeah, then.
Oh, demolition by neglect. And what about the brick building though, that, I mean, you said was the oldest in the village, and the one that's really
Yeah.
definitely, abandoned, what's that?
It's not abandoned,
Oh,
so,
it's not?
yeah, so we have an applicant that's actually proposing to redevelop around it and maintain the building, actually, fix the building up, and then sort of add to it, by adding down and the rest of the
So
property.
it's not landmarked in any way, right?
Correct.
Wow, so he voluntarily recognizes that, because it can't be in such great shape that it's worth keeping per se.
No, but he sees value in it,
Wow,
and so he wants to keep it.
well, that's great.
Okay, so are there any examples where something like what you're thinking of is successful, like, well, whatever it is that, like, where things might not necessarily be there anymore, or it's like kind of a large swath of the town, or some buildings, some,
I will get, back to you with good examples. I know they exist,
yeah,
but I will get those specific examples.
yeah, stuff like that, something else, like.
My gut reaction to that. Probably the most promising way forward is a walking tour on, along the lines of the museum and the streets. With some possible candidates for individual landmarking. That's my gut reason.
I would agree, and, as you said, with the signage like museums in the street, where you see what it looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
And QR codes are an amazing thing. You can take them to a video, you can do anything.
Does it make sense if you're having something like a museum in the street to have a start and finish point or circular?
I think with this, it wouldn't tell a story in a row. You can kind of go everywhere, and just walk in and learn the story of it. It doesn't have a beginning and an end. Yeah.
No, that's not what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the route itself. Because you're, in some cases, like with the museum in the streets, it makes sense to do the upper road
Mhm.
and up there and then do on the south or the west side of Route 9. And I guess my question is, that's even hillier there,
Mhm.
more hilly?
Mhm.
The dynamics and how to do that if we're going to do that.
Certainly worth thinking.
I thank you all for your time.
No, for sure.
Yeah, it's
It's a great
really,
idea.
really important, and it's just something you have to fit on, because that, like you said, who
I would
knows
never
what
know.
they're planning for that, and then, that, I never knew that about that village. I've always been fascinated with that road, because I knew there was
Something. was there.
something,
Yeah.
but, I had no idea, how to get out there.
I will say the one thing that made me want to do this is, and I shared with Adam when I was doing the big wall, and I put it there, there was an article from I think he was on, he might have been a trustee at the time. But he said, the waterfront is overrun with Negroes. What a fine advertisement to the newcomer to Austin. And it just, like, made my stomach just pull up in a knot, because that's where we live, that's where we created a community, and to hear that. And I felt that we just have to do something to honor what they did, which was pretty quite remarkable. When you, there was, when you read through it, there was a pilot, he started a school, he was teaching aviation to kids in Austin. When you read through this, what they did was quite incredible, with little means.
Yeah.
I might be jumping the gun here a bit too, but we perhaps should be thinking about what potential opposition we might get, so that we can maybe begin to think how we could start addressing that. Maybe not now, but as we work through the process. And if we have any ideas about what other ideas there are right now for development in that area, to start thinking about that as well, or at some point in the process, so we would be able to have a response.
I agree. Catherine was right in, showing precedent with other communities that have done it successfully,
Mhm.
and then possibly finding their funding sources and having that already developed.
I think it'd be tremendously exciting, and, we're HPC thinking more about and supporting and spearheading this, I think it's very nice.
Thank you.
To switch gears slightly, I have a pet building, that I love, that I would hate to see, torn down. And who knows what's happening with it, but it is really a defining structure on our waterfront. It's one of the few remaining. I wonder if you could pull up a photo of Quincy Street.
The big warehouse?
Yeah.
Adam, I hate to break it to you, there is not a chance that the owner will ever agree. I am dead serious. It will not happen.
Well, let's see which one it is.
I'm trying, I don't mean to burst the bubble here, but this owner will not permit this.
Are you talking about the Westerly property?
Yep.
Oh, I know Joe, yeah. Yeah,
It's just not, I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna happen.
it's on the other side of the tracks, or it's on the
Oh,
waterfront?
my. What is going on?
Is it the one on the waterfront that's part of Westerly Marine?
It's next to Westerly, but it's their building.
Yeah.
It is a cool building. actually. And there,
Yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
that's it.
Yeah, that's
That's it.
cool.
It is
That
cool.
is cool.
And what was it?
What was it?
I don't know.
I have
don't know
pictures of
very
it.
much about the
I'm gonna bring you pictures of that too. I'm just gonna bring you.
I'm not, is there anything right now actively, Stuart?
Nothing, but they're holding it. And that block there, by the way, that is now all Village of Ossining hourly parking 24/7 for people who wish to go into the city and stay late,
Okay.
effective today.
Oh,
Oh. What was the building?
Do not know, but the the DeMarchis family has been holding it, and they are not ones who are going to make this go for a historic designation.
I think if it's this one or the wire one, they made, tombstone,
Really? Wow.
really far back, but I have a picture of this one. I don't know if it's this one or the one on, Water Street, but I'll get you a picture.
The wire mill's nowhere near as cool as this one, I can tell you. It's,
One was on the other side.
yeah, it's over there. I'll get to it, but
But it's a very expensive building to knock down, and it's probably, it looks like it's very solid. I can't imagine that, the family would just knock it down.
I don't think it's that expensive to knock down, but it might be hard to build back up. That's the,
Well, it also, yeah, within 150, but
it's right by the water,
if you keep the foundation where it is, I guess you can.
next to oil tankers. There's a bunch of reasons why you would not,
I'm sorry.
why it wouldn't financially make a lot of sense to tear it down
That's
for
the
the
wire.
owner. Yeah, this is where I'm.
Did you not say, Adam, before that you didn't need the owner's approval to landmark?
That's right, and maybe,
Hmm.
what I would say is, the building's not in great shape, and even in my time here in Austin, it's deteriorating. And, this may be, an opportunity to sell the owner on tax credits for rehabilitation purposes. I don't know.
I also, folks, just so you understand, you make a recommendation, it is the Board of Trustees that has to make the designation.
Right.
So it's only your recommendation on this. It's there. And the other thing is, if you file an application, which you can on your own, you immediately stop any issuance of building permits for that location, which tends not to put you in the greatest view with regard to the owner of the building if they are not consenting to the landmark status.
If they don't consent, you could still, if the board, the village board wants to do it, they could still do it, even.
They could, but I could tell you that the likelihood of that happening is slim and none.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Adam, I still think it would be worth it, because that's why we're here. And I don't really care what a developer thinks, that's why we're here. So whatever it takes, I am on board, because if buildings like that start getting torn down, Austining will have no history, no pull, people will not want to move here.
Catherine, if the board wants to make an application, they can do it. I'm merely expressing
I understand.
the reality of the situation.
I understand, but the reality of the world is bleak, so we're here to try to.
Well, yeah, I understand. I just think it's important that you recognize that to do it, you can always file an application. You are permitted to file it on your own, although it would be really recommended that you discuss it with the property owner. But at the end of the day, the decision rests with the Board of Trustees.
Yeah, I understand. I'll here for some of them are.
How long is process?
shady.
How long is process? Oh, sorry.
If the Board of Trustees, can the Board of Trustees approve it if the owner doesn't want it?
Yeah.
They could, but again, I think you have to look at reality.
They're a big taxpayer. How long a process is it?
It requires 2 public hearings, obviously notice to the property owner. So it takes a matter of months at the earliest.
I just want to throw this out there, and one thing is, because Austin is so big on an open highway, it's developing its waterfront. If we don't do something right now, as you said, it could all be gone. You could just see all this fire stuff.
So, I feel like it's kind of important to jump in here. Everybody's saying that Austining is really in favor of redoing the waterfront. But I do want to point out that the comprehensive plan, in fact, says to shift away from building west of the railroad track. That was passed. And so because of environmental concerns primarily, so I think it's unfair to say that the village, certainly the local officials and the general public who came out and said that we're concerned about environmental issues and voted on a comprehensive plan that is trying to somewhat discourage development of the west.
Thank you for that.
Doesn't mean that things can't be built there, but certainly it's not like actively heavily being encouraged. I think that there are a lot of people that would like to see those oil tanks go away and be replaced with something better. And that may mean that in order to pay for the cost of getting rid of the oil tanks, that you would have to replace with something that is going to be able to pay for that kind of brownfield cleanup. But I don't think that that's the be all end all of what's going on. The bulk of the waterfront remains Sing Sing and parks at the end of the day, and then Westerly and Chatham are not at any sort of danger. I mean, they're going to stay as long as they want to stay.
Who owns the oil tank, by the way? The family?
It's the oil tank company that,
Oh, it's not the money.
no, it's like Paradise. Heating.
Paradise Oil, Paradise Heating and Oil.
So
They used to-
I imagine they don't want to stay there forever either, because they also have to deal with the impacts of the sea level rise. So, at the end of the day, but I think it's not a fair statement to say that like Austining, and certainly not the Board of Trustees, who I'm not here to defend them or otherwise, they've not said that that's what they want. So it's just not accurate.
If that, I don't know anyone who said that, but the downtown, if that plan has protecting the waterfront, I would think that presenting this to the Board of Trustees wouldn't that be in line with that comprehensive plan?
Yeah, so the comprehensive plan calls for a lot of things. Again, the protection of that particular building, Stuart, I think it's trying to give you some advice on that. I'm not in the middle of that.
Only buildings down
But,
there,
yeah.
but- So where's the harm in being like?
I'm not opining on that. It's just, because it's been repeated a couple times tonight that
I know. but
people want to
feel
develop
like-
over there, and I think there may just be some misinformation about the
We're
general
having so
design.
much, like, it's not gonna happen, but like, I understand we're here to approve certain applications, but on a larger scale, I would hope, and if this isn't the forum for it, maybe another, grassroots operation happens. But where's the harm in the HPC constantly having very pleasant, like, suggestions of, this is valuable to Austin. We think that you should consider,
Yeah.
protecting it. We're not we're not coming at it like
Yeah.
angry. We're just, I feel
Oh,
like
yeah,
that's
yeah.
part of this
Yeah.
board and that's part of the job.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is not a discouragement of doing exactly what you just said. But the comprehensive plan actually does specifically talk about historic
Yeah, I remember.
adaptive reuse, and it talks about that property in particular as a site that's, possible for adaptive reuse.
Yeah, and I really.
So historic preservation through adaptive
Yeah,
reuse.
I
Yeah,
think that-
yeah, so like, you can do the restaurant hub or, all sorts of cool things with the building. But keeping it, keeping the building, but fixing the use.
Yeah, and any place that does that, that sets you apart from the rest of this new stuff. And Austin actually has that here already, so that's just where I get passionate of like, well, I don't want it, especially being on the board, I feel like it's a responsibility to try.
So if you think an application is warranted, you can always submit an application on behalf of the HPC. The statute absolutely allows for that. You can do it. There's nothing that says you should not. And there would be a public hearing. It would go to the Board of Trustees, and ultimately it would be their determination.
It's something I throw out there because I think it's very significant building that speaks to the significance of the river and Austin's development on the river. It's something to think about. I don't know if this could potentially come together before my departure, but I encourage the HPC to be imaginative and to spend its capital wisely. Maybe it didn't make sense to go forward above opposition or over opposition in the case of Lewis Laws's former residence. But maybe it does make sense to disregard owner opposition in a case like the Quimby Street warehouse. Food for thought.
By the way, am I on the right, is that the right sign, Water Street? Because I thought this was Westerly.
That's Water Street there, and then it goes, and then at where it hits Westerly, because Westerly's actually on the other side of the bridge.
Right, so when Jaime mentioned developing on the other side of the tracks, we're not yet on the other side of the tracks.
And not at this picture, you are not, but Jaime was showing a picture of the water mill, the mill there,
Sorry.
electric,
Yeah, if you go to Westerly, where the building is in front of the oil tanks, that's also a substantial brick structure, and maybe it's a different one we're talking about. Just keep going over the ramp. Yeah. I was a little confused. Yeah.
Jaime, the other way.
Other way.
No, Quimby, you're right, you got it, there's Quimby.
You're messing me up here, Stuart.
I'm trying to, it's been a very, very long day.
Yeah, this is the building you were talking about, yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful building. I mean, it is unique throughout the village.
I thought it'd make great condos. Maybe not so close to the track. Yeah. maybe
Flood
it's a
zone.
possibility.
Probably, yeah.
I lived down there for many years and I watched many Alexas float by.
Many of what?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure there's a boat, floated past that building onto the tracks. So,
Oh, yeah, right. No, we had a lot, I belong to Shadowmont, we had a lot of members stuff. over there.
yeah, I mean, it's certainly low lying. That's sort of what I was talking about earlier. It's kind of it's close to the water, there's challenges, and because of the oil tanks, and nobody really knows what's going on that site.
But the
There's been
other,
a lot of migration from the coal, it's most likely a brownfield, it's that challenges.
But- sorry, but the other building that was on Water Street, which echoes this, is that also owned by the family? 'Cause wouldn't that
So
also be
I
a
don't know
candidate?
what you're talking about, but I
The
will
one you
say
had
that
that said,
this
Water
property is
Street.
the start of the ownership and.
no,
then-
no, I wasn't doing that. I was trying to get back to the Water Street photo. you
No,
had.
it's not, it's a different thing.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But yet it's the same kind of a building. It's a substantial brick factory building.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
industrial.
That could be, does that have any more, potential to be saved than, yeah, that one?
That's Metro North. Can't touch it.
No, not that. I'm sorry. I stopped spinning. I'm pondering his question.
Maybe I was looking at Metro
You
North
know,
building. I may be-
every building should be taken on its own, and I will say that that wire mill building has had a lot added to it over time, so this is it.
Yeah, I was.
So there are
looking
parts of
more
it that are older, and there are parts of it that are not.
Well, I was confused. I was considering, there's that over there. I don't know what that
That's
is.
that's the wire mill. building.
Oh, yeah,
That whole
okay.
buil-
Yeah.
So it's actually like 8 buildings. They're not all the same.
No windows were put in recently.
Yeah, so there's
In the
a,
last 2 years.
so the question is a little more complicated. That building that we saw on Waverly is one building.
Western.
Western, I'm sorry, is one building, whereas the building, the wire mill is like 8 buildings that are all combined next to, and I don't know the history of them individually. Or collectively, other than it was a wire mill. And, it was owned, I think, sometime by, Con Ed. So, Con Ed still owns, property over here. There's like a substation and.
Is there something we should vote on about this idea?
This is just up for discussion, as I am on my way out, so to speak, for the HPC. Things to think about for the future.
Yeah.
And like Stuart said, if the HPC thinks the Quimby Street warehouse is worthy of landmarking and worth the fight, then maybe this is something the HPC should consider. Grand Central Station would not be standing today if people weren't willing to fight.
Good.
And Joanne's Hall.
If I believe, if my history serves me correctly, they lost that case, so.
No,
They got, when the city bought it, right, it became, and it
Grand
ultimately got
Central
landlocked.
Station, which I was in earlier today, would have been demolished if it weren't for historic preservation.
Yeah, same way Penn Station.
Joanne's Hall, where the Brandreth Fill Factory did destruction to sort of Grand Central moment for Ossining that she hoped wouldn't be repeated. So things to keep in mind for the future. Anything else? I think we've gone through the agenda tonight.
We have, but you missed, something I was asking, Stuart about, and can I request, what is it called, the council session?
It's an advisory council. If we can do it, hopefully, Dan, we can do it fairly quickly because,
I think it'll only take 10 minutes. but
Okay.
is that-
You don't wanna close, adjourn the meeting?
yeah,
Okay.
close your meeting first.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second,
We're all in favor.
I
Okay, Dan, what's your issue?
spoke with Adam, if you remember, I mentioned